Do you use music and films with your students? Do you have some go-to activities that you normally do, but could maybe use some new ideas? Well, in this episode, I'm joined by Sybil Sanchez. She's a Spanish teacher in New Jersey and the president-elect of AATSP. We explore how music and film can move beyond being classroom extras to becoming meaningful sources of input, culture, and communication. Sybil shares practical ideas for choosing the right materials, keeping listening and viewing purposeful, and designing tasks that help students move from enjoying a song or a scene to actually using the language with confidence. So, let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast, with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and you know I have to start every episode by reminding you that you are an incredible language teacher. You're listening to a podcast about language teaching. Nobody's asking you to do that. You're choosing to do that, and you are engaging in this. So thank you so much for always going that extra mile and doing great things for your students and being a great colleague as well. So on today's episode, you're going to be hearing some great ideas to bring music and film into your classroom and really looking deeply at language learning through music and film. And joining me to have this conversation today is Sybil Sanchez, and she is a Spanish teacher in New Jersey, and she's been at this for about 24 years, and she's highly involved in FLENGE, which is the New Jersey Association for Language Teachers. And not only is she just a member, but she was recently named their Teacher of the Year. But even more than that, she is also the president-elect of AATSP, which is the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese. Now, this is the national organization where she is the president-elect, and she's also the president of her state chapter of AATSP. So this is an individual who's doing so many great things out there, and she's presenting at a lot of conferences, and you've probably seen her, and if not, you will see her soon. So she is the perfect person to come and talk to us about what's going on in her classroom, particularly about music and film. So, Sybil, I hope I did you justice. I tried to get most of it in there. I probably could have said more, but thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you, Joshua. I wanted to really appreciate this time with me. And yes, indeed, it is an honor and a privilege and that I am here, and I humbly accept all of these recognitions because it takes a path to be here.
I know that a couple of weeks back, maybe it was a couple of months back now, I was doing a workshop for FLENGE in New Jersey. So Sybil was there and very engaged. So I knew right away who she was because she was this teacher who was just so into all the topics and sharing what she was doing. And so when she came up to me after and she said, "Hey, I'd love to be on your podcast." And I said, "Absolutely." I knew we would have a great conversation. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here. So you love music and film.
I do. Certainly I do. I grew up with music. I grew up watching films like in the oldies, the Western movies where I can actually learn about history of USA where I am living right now. It is part of who I am.
Wonderful. It's great to take what you are saying as part of you, like your passions, and then bring that into the classroom. Because when you're passionate about it, the students, they feel it as well. So we definitely want to bring that. So let's jump into this idea of music and film and why that is important or why that matters in our language classroom. So often, I think teachers, sometimes even myself, that we see music and film as an extra in the language classroom. But why do you see them as essential tools in language learning and cultural understanding rather than just something extra that happens once in a while?
I have been blessed that in my school district, we actually have a full course that it is only on films. And then the extras are poetry, music, and like some other reading text. And part of that, it's because we wanted to build the competence of impromptu conversations, like developing the communication. And music and films, they bring authentic materials. They bring your emotion. They leave your life experience into the classroom. Not only that, but they also makes you do the critical thinking in terms of what story is behind the song, what history part it's about the films. And language becomes in that moment human. Everything drops, and then it's not actually a textbook, but you can actually capture the full experience with the whole thing.
I think sometimes when we talk about an authentic resource, so you referred to music and movies and film as being an authentic resource. And because they are so authentic, we can sometimes see them as only accessible to students with a really high proficiency level. So could you talk to us a little bit about how you see using music and film, which is such authentic high proficiency language, at various proficiency levels?
One of the things that we need to consider is we need to assess how we're going to use it, to what levels, and then what's going to be the purpose, what's going to be the objectives that you want to attain. Building up the activities based on what you want the outcome of your students. Because I know that the songs could be challenging, the films could be challenging, especially if there's obviously accents, certain rhythms. So the number one that we have to consider is this film or is this song appropriate, number one, to your audience. So get to know your audience first, the age, then get to know their likes and dislikes, and then also the competence. Will this be a group of students who likes the challenge, or it's more like as novice, you want them to learn. At the same time, you wanted to capture the interest, but you don't want them to lose interest at the same token. The teachers, that we are the experts, we evaluate and start scaffolding. What can we do? And then obviously the techniques of comprehensible input, they have to have some objective of what you're going to achieve. Okay, I'm going to just make a list of vocabularies based on the feelings, the emotions. If you are portraying a movie, if they can identify what's the main idea.
I want to stay on this idea of the comprehensible input that you just mentioned, and using movies, film, and music for a comprehensible input to make sure that our listeners all understand when we say comprehensible input, that means that it's language that's just beyond the total comprehension of students. So it helps to push them, and students are able to acquire language when they're understanding the language. So when we are making the language of a song or in a movie comprehensible for students, so we're engaging in comprehensible input, how do you make sure that it is a useful tool for CI and to support that comprehension with students? Because it can come off as very overwhelming when they're watching a movie or listening to a song. So how do you make it comprehensible for students?
It changes with the period, with the classes, with the ages. But the way I started is, let's listen. Then first of all, let's notice, whether if it's the rhythm, if it's in a song, let's communicate. Let's notice the emotions. How does it make you feel? Whether you're not understanding the lyrics, but the rhythm. Once that you get in there, so with that, you are like awakening, like the senses. If it is a movie, the same thing. What do you observe in this movie? Especially, usually I start with the trailers, right? So then they capture the interest. Let's watch a trailer. What do you think it's going to be about? Like the hook. Like when you're fishing. So then, okay, now I'm going to go with like the whole target. And then I start scaffolding, because obviously as a teacher, I'm the expert. So I know where to navigate. So that day will be identifying certain words that are going to help me to engage in a conversation. So I start like, once that they listen and they notice, I start making connections and I start building up the vocabulary that they need to start in order to talk about, or as again, depending on the level, making a list, start making a sentences, or at the intermediate level, which is like when I do, like more start expressing ideas about the connections that they are making. So that's the first one: listen, notice, and connect. Or There has to be a purpose. What do you want them to do?
Are you providing students with vocabulary? You mentioned that a little bit before, that you're pulling out the vocabulary. So are you pre-teaching any themes or vocabulary, or are you letting students pull that out on their own? So how are you having them begin initially engaging with these topics?
So I let them tell me what they see, what they feel. So in that way, I start building vocabulary. I take notes on the board and they take notes on their paper, and then they are going to build, because they also have to be agents of their own learning. It's either I pre-teach it based on some visuals, because that's another important thing that I have seen, that it's not enough. Okay, here's the song, here's the worksheet, here's the fill in the blanks. It's visuals. You want to have visuals. If it is a song, you want to have the video that goes with the song, or you want to also have the lyrics. Like the karaoke. If it's a movie, same thing. You want to have visuals, and then here and there also put some snippets of the segments, so then you can recall or start building up the vocabulary.
So I remember when I was doing the workshop in New Jersey that you were in, we were talking about doing running dictation. And
Yes.
you raised your hand. I said, does anyone use running dictation? And you raised your hand and you said, yes. And can you tell us how you do running dictation with songs? Because I
Oh
love
my
that
God.
idea.
Yeah, my students loved it. And I'm going to have to give credits. I learned this long time ago when I was in my home country, learning to be an ESL teacher. I was in charge of the song and games lab that we had in Ecuador, because I was teaching in an institute. So this song has to be at their level and not that long, right? Not that short, not that long, like just the right amount. So I use this song that it is from Daddy Yankee called Sonríele a la Vida. It's probably like maybe altogether like 15, 20 stanzas, and they are easy to read. I printed a copy of the stanzas and I put it outside of my classroom. I numbered the stanzas. So I divided my classroom in 5 groups of 4. So, and I told them, we're going to play a game. We're going to put these outside. We're going to have the messenger game. So in groups of 4, I give them the number 1, 2, 3, 4. When I set a number, they have to go run, memorize as many lines as they can. So they have to come like stanza number 1 says this, 2, 3. Nobody can talk, only the person that was delivering the message. And it has to be pretty much like a secret. So in that way, we were reinforcing memorization, retaining information. The students have to decode or understand what they were reading or saying or making connections. And then obviously the advantage that the people on the table were like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. And they could go as many times as they want until I say the next number. And obviously, just to increase the tension, I put a timer. So I had a timer for 1 minute. So in that way, I kept them captivated, motivated, and on task. And the groups that finished the first, they were going to be given a surprise at the very end. So as my objective, I said, you have been able to interpret, you've been able to present your idea, you've been able to interpersonal, exchange the information. So we pretty much work on the 3 modes without even so much explanation going on.
And when you did that particular song as the running dictation, had they seen and heard the song before, or was this their first engagement with the song, seeing the lyrics?
It was the first time. So that was actually the best part, because I do have some students who are heritage speakers, native speakers, and it's really challenging. I always try to get a song that I could probably guess that they haven't heard or is not they feel inspired. And that's where my personal touch as a person from the oldies, at the same time from nowadays, captures that essence of this song might be a good one to do in the classroom.
And I would think that with it being song lyrics, that if they can figure out what the rhythm is of the phrasing, that will actually help them to remember it as they're going back in the classroom to tell the person who's writing it down. Adding the music helps them with the retention as well. So I would like to get in some ideas to be using with music and the different films in the classroom. But before I get to that, I just want to maybe ask a question, and that is choosing your materials. And you mentioned earlier, know your students and at the level and something they're interested in. So with so many options available, there's so many movies, there's so much music, how can teachers select the right music and film that is age appropriate, culturally meaningful? I think that's really important, and just effective for language learning as well. So what's your process for choosing the song and choosing that film amongst all the possibilities?
Yes, I definitely agree. We don't just pick a movie. We just don't pick a song. It has to deal with the thematic unit that we are doing. Same thing with the films. That also brings the analytical part of the cultural aspect, to have the sense of cultural criticism or connections, because that part, it's very important, that it awakens and then the magic of proficiency. Oh, I am able to say this, when they actually discover that they were able to find out what was happening in the film. So some of those rules, let's say, is choose materials that speak to the students' identities, age, sparks curiosity, and give them meaningful language that they can actually work with. When you do that, then whatever is the song, whatever is the movie, it's gonna, in a sense, mirror all of what they can do, and that's gonna be engaging to them, because they're gonna be feeling that there's a purpose for that. Only like filling out the blanks or, oh, this is boring. Because, yeah, it could be sometimes boring because they don't understand the process. Because they usually it's like, can we just get the movie done? Can we just get the song done? But it is really important to get the students engaged in the process of learning. You will know when it is the right resource or the right film to do this.
Yeah. And do you ever use just selected scenes from a film, or do you tend to do an entire film?
It has to be an intention. There has to be an objective. Find out what is the problem, what's the conflict. Like when you're reading a book, how this character, would you describe it? And then you will go like, how is this character evolving? Let's observe the process. So I tend to do it with scenes. And then, as I was saying, they die for, can we just watch a movie? Because they get like, oh my gosh, because there's a level that they start understanding what's going on just by curiosity. They just want to go this. So it's challenging because the students want to watch the movie. Obviously, in the classroom, there's a purpose. We want to communicate, them to develop critical thinking. We want them to connect, to make connections. So what is the life of the person in the film similar or different than yours? And depending on the movie that you're doing, there's a lot of material to explore.
Mm-hmm. And if they're intrigued enough, they'll maybe look for it on their own and watch the whole movie if you're not doing the whole thing in your classroom.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we were watching the movie Radical with Eugenio Derbez, that it is like on a based true story. And yeah, and the kid didn't hold his horses. He was like, Senor, I can't with this. So he actually went and purchased the movie in Amazon.
Yeah, and you need to know what happened. Yeah,
yeah, they needed to know. Which, you know what? And that's another challenge, but another advantage. Like immediately when I realized that, without putting the kid on the spot or the student on the spot, they gave me the strength of, okay, it's grasping the interest. And the person will start obviously saying that in English. And I was like, oh, okay, excellent. So now let's see if you are telling this, or if you're making this a comparison, but now you want to use the target language, how would you say it? So then they started, okay. And again, that kind of entitles them, gives them the strength, gives them the empathy, the connection.
So are there any tips that you would give teachers of things to avoid, like pitfalls when they're choosing music or films or scenes, that don't choose a song that, or don't choose a scene that does this because it might not work? Have you ever had any of those experiences where you said, oh, that just didn't work, and you can figure out why?
As teachers, and we're always evolving, from my point of view, we got to try. And not everything is going to be perfect. We need to be able to discern or discriminate. Like sometimes we think that the students can handle it. And then it has happened to me that when I'm like, okay, my students can do it, but maybe I was taking things for granted, and I had to either elevate it or to de-escalate the activity. Mm-hmm. And as teachers, I have to improvise. And so far, the connection with my students is great. And this is something that you develop, right? That mm-hmm. And I'm upfront, like, kids, time out. This is not working. Let's give it a try. And then sometimes they even say, señora, time out. No comprendo, por favor, repita. And then that's great, right? Because you're building the connection with them. And as I said in the beginning, you make them agent of their own learning. That's something mm-hmm. that I learned in one of the workshops that I attended. It makes me always think about it. If it doesn't work this way, there's always another way to access.
So I'd like to just get a couple of ideas and some activities that teachers could maybe try out that they haven't done in their classrooms. So we mentioned the running dictation. We talked about how does that make you feel and looking at it that way. So what other ways have you had students engage with either clips from a movie or a song in your classroom that brought in maybe different modes?
So the first one is when they watch, number one, they write about their emotions. They make a list of vocabularies that they are going to describe the characters or what they make them feel in terms of songs. After that, they sense of what do you think they are talking about, and there's no right or wrong answer, like the interpretive part, depending on what I am doing or at this stage. Usually I use a PowerPoint where instead of having a worksheet, have the same sentences that I put in a worksheet with the answers that fly in, like A, B, C, and then we discuss. So that will be the interpersonal whenever they are reading with me the sentences, and then they see the answers, and then they start using with the chat mat, yo creo, I believe the answer is A, B, and then we start communicating. Or if it's me in charge, or I just put them on the computer, on the screen, and then they start conversing, and then they have to vote on the answer if using a board where they actually, or a paper if you don't have it, a paper you make them make ABC papers, right? So they have to hold the ABC, and then we start conversing based on, for example, one movie called Los Malcriados. They have to describe the characters. ¿Es Bárbara malcriada? ¿Qué significa malcriada? And then based on what they see, and then based on the options, they know that malcriada is the answer. But then I want them to tell me what malcriado is based on what they watch. Oh, so señora, so it's a misbehaved person. Oh, yeah, it's a person that is. And then we start negotiating. So mm-hmm. that could be like the interpersonal at a beginner level that you start communicating, and then you start sparkling like, how do I say this, señora? How do you say dishonest? And then like, oh, deshonesto, una persona que no es, and then we start making up a list. And again, the students already have their own vocabulary list, and then they start making the vocabulary list. And depending on at the very end of the activity, you don't have to wait until the very end. Once that they do this, so then like, so tell me, if you were the father, whatever you want to choose in the character, what advice would you give? Always depending on what they can do. So now you do, what would you tell them? And then we can do that part as an interpersonal or presentational, because like you exchange papers. Usually I ask them to exchange paper, and that also counts as interpersonal. Communicating among themselves. They have to read their own handwriting. And as I was saying, or sometimes I just the post-tips in terms of what would you do? And then like they have to, if they were using Twitter, they have just X amount of words that they have to do, because some students, they tend to narrate the whole thing of what's going on, or they extend, but you also want them to teach them that you want them to be concise, especially if you're getting ready for certain assessments. So that's another strategy that teachers can use in the classroom.
Excellent. So it's the idea of whether it is a clip from a movie or whether it is a song that you're using, there's the starting point for all of these communicative activities in the classroom. And I think traditionally we think of, oh, you show a movie or you listen to a song and then maybe you talk about it. But what you're really showing us is that these are tools for providing comprehensible input, for discussions about culture, for then writing and speaking. And so it's so much more than just listening to it. There's all these other things you can do with it. And I would just be curious to know if there's ever any sort of assessment piece that you put after working with a song or a movie clip, or is it just part of the assessment as a whole in a unit? So how might they work into the assessment piece?
Excellent point. Yes, there is an assessment, because usually the song and the movie as part of the thematic unit. So this is something that I always tell my students. I'm not expecting you to master the movie. I'm not expecting you to master the lyric of the song or the songs, because we usually do a set of 3-4 songs that are tied into the thematic unit, or just one movie, and then we do the assessment. Part of the things that as they are doing building the vocabulary, and then getting into these discussions, they also have to annotate. Something that I'm forgetting is that they have to annotate what practices they are seeing that they identify is part of their daily life or their culture, that they see probably different, that they think that they don't understand. And we got to think about, like, how come you don't understand it? Is it age, culture, socioeconomical places that this is happening, timeline that this is happening? So I usually ask them to annotate these practices that they see, their perspective, how probably it is seen by the spectrum of the movie, and the products. What is it that you are seeing? So using those keywords also at the very end, the assessment, depending on the level, right? Like the higher level will be like, how did this movie connect with the theme of the identity of a person? And then they have to use certain vocabulary, and then they have to use what happened in certain scenarios. Another assessment, they have to take the role of those characters in our high school, whether parents or students in our society nowadays. What would be the challenges? How would be like with some administrators that they would be doing, that they would be facing? How would be perceived? They enjoy it because it's a matter that they were actually portraying me as a teacher and the vice principals. What would they say to those characters to give them a piece of advice or to debate with what's going on, to show that they understood their character, and then create the conflict, or not only the conflict, like coming to an end, to a plan of action. At a lower level, it could be just sentences that you put in there that you want to get key vocabulary. So most likely, depending on the level, it's based on the song, on the movie, that it is just identifying the words. Or it could be challenging with the theme, that now they have to recognize the words, because they're going to be decoding the sentences, and because they either, again, depending on the strategy of the teacher, either recall the vocabulary, or you give them a word bank in the assessment paper, or they actually have it with them, the whole word bank. So, we can use it in a variety of ways. I think I put the example of like for the higher to the lowest, and it could be interpretive, interpersonal presentation, or like many of the teachers we tend to do. Let's write a letter. Let's write a letter to the character. Let's exchange, pretend that we are doing pen pals. We don't do pen pals anymore because with technology. And also for the fun of the fact, thank God for Kahoot and Blueket and Quizlet. Many of these resources are already done. If you put it in Kahoot, there are already certain activities based on certain films, or Blooket based on certain songs too. So it's right there. Thanks for technology and the teachers, the great teachers that we are.
Yeah, teachers are very generous. They're very willing to share what they're doing, and it's so incredible. And so I think that there are teachers listening that maybe have used film and music in their classrooms, and they're feeling that maybe they haven't been using it as much lately, and they're feeling re-inspired to start doing it again. Or maybe we have some teachers who haven't really used it much and they would like to get started, but it can feel a little overwhelming finding the right piece and all the activities. So, can you share with us, maybe for a teacher who wants to incorporate more music or film in their class, but are maybe unsure where to begin? What's one simple strategy that you would recommend trying to find success with it, like right away?
You want to watch, you want to observe, you want to notice if the material is applicable to you, then start sharing, start building up. You don't actually need like a huge playlist. You don't actually need to watch like the whole movie. You can start little by little. The way I have been doing this, and like it could probably work in another scenario, but it is based on the thematic unit. Watch and observe. What am I teaching? What's my thematic unit? Am I talking about like technology? Right now I'm doing technology with my Spanish 4s. And there's this movie called Megan, although that's in English, right? But we can start debating with terminologies, and then we watch on a movie that we can make connections with how technology has make us evolve to where we are. And then with that, for example, I used the movie Radical, where in the schools in this movie that happened in Mexico, the schools did not have the technology. So it was a terrible impact. They did not have the textbooks. They didn't have library. So it was a great thing for me to, in that snippet, to talk about all these advanced technologies that we have that sometimes we take for granted. So going back, so just watch, notice, and start sharing, whether if it is a short clip, whether if it's a piece of a song, a piece of a lyric, so you don't have to feel overwhelmed. Notice those details, the imagery, the wording, the symbolisms that you might have, and then start scaffolding to where you want to take it. And it might take only 5 minutes, and it will create engagement, instant engagement.
So where are you continuing to learn and thrive with your teaching? I'm always looking for recommendations for teachers so they can continue on their learning journey right along with you. What can you recommend to us?
The first one, it is go to workshops. Because workshops are the best, because you get hands-ons, you walk out with not only great ideas, depending on the workshops, you get materials are being shared, and then you can actually modify it to your best of your interest. There are also some courses that if you would like to, you can take. I personally am taking a course on music and the cultural background that it is in this company called Idioma. They are offering great courses, and they are also offering graduate courses, so you can take it. And then I did my master's degree in Salamanca University, and it's my alma mater. And because of technology and all of this, what we have right now, we can also take these courses online. I also have these courses online that go with films and songs that you actually expand your horizons with. If you want to get a vast list of, or like at least being exposed to, because let's face it, we are very busy. We have a lot on our plate. Constantly, we have to think about our audience and how do we approach them. So then, as I said, like we are always making our students feel in love with what we do, because we want them to interest. We want them to feel that it is not that they are learning a language. They are learning how to communicate. They are learning how to read people. They are learning to understand different perspectives. And obviously, they are learning the line of respect. So those are the things: workshops, conferences, idioma, and Salamanca University.
Yes. So speaking of workshops and conferences, can you remind us where the AATSP conference is this year?
In Orlando. Not miss this one. It's going to be in the month of July.
So how can our listeners be connecting with you to talk all things music and movies?
I have social media. I have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. We're going to probably have to post
yes.
all my
it'll all be in the show notes. I'll make sure that they can click right there and they can connect with you via social media. And I will also make sure the link is in the show notes to AATSP. So if teachers are thinking they want to get to the Orlando conference, I will make sure the link to the website is there as well. Always like to support our language teacher associations.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that we met at a workshop by a language teacher association in New Jersey, I love state language associations. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows that. I very much champion all of that work. I love the fact that they do so much work on the ground level with teachers, with workshops, with conferences. It's usually an all-volunteer board creating all of this for teachers, and the amount of advocacy work that goes on behind the scenes that teachers aren't even aware of, that the boards of directors of the language associations are in Washington for advocacy days, and being a part of that organization. It's more than just the workshops. It's what is being done by the organization on behalf of teachers. And that's not just the state language associations. That's AATF, AATSP, ACTFL, NECTFL, all of the associations. So I always like to give the shout out and the respect that they absolutely deserve for all the work that they do. Okay.
Indeed.
So I always like to leave our listeners with a fun, hearty piece of advice to get them through the day. If they're listening in the morning, something to ponder. So what can you leave with us about life, teaching? What's your advice?
From Antonio Machado: caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Pretty much saying there's nothing set on a stone. You make your own way. Trust on the power of authentic experiences. Music and films are not just tools. They are bridges to identity, curiosity, connection. You don't have to know every answer. You don't have to analyze every lyric perfectly, because we know that it is up to interpretation. And just be willing to show up with curiosity and let the language do its work. Start small, start intentionally, and remember that every song, every scene, every moment of engagement plants a seed in our audience. And as poor person that I was when I was younger, every attempt make us to the next level. And it gives us the confidence, communication, genuine love for what we are doing. We are not just teachers. We are opening doors to culture. So we step into it boldly. And again, as I always quote, because my values are pretty much forced at home and part of me as a volleyball player. It resonates so highly when I do, let's go the extra mile. And if you are in the Olympic Games, or like when you go to the national games, I feel that when I came to this country, I feel like a cultural ambassador. And we are. You don't have to be immigrants. You are in the classroom. I feel that we have to pass the torch in the Olympic Games, because this flame has to keep livid in your classroom. Pass it on to another one, and you will see how the light ignites in the whole world. And we have our global citizens.
Yeah. Just mentioning right there, go the extra mile. with all of that reference in there. And that's how I started this podcast episode. When I said, you are a teacher listening to a podcast about language teaching, you are going the extra mile by seeking out these opportunities to enhance your teaching. So it comes full circle. That's where we started. And that's the perfect place to end with your words right there. So Sybil Sanchez, this has been an absolute pleasure. And I thank you so much for being with me here today.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor, a pleasure, and I'm hoping that everybody enjoys this. And let's keep in touch.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Sybil Sanchez? I'm rethinking how students engage with music and film, particularly those opening activities to tap into emotion and anticipation. So be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Sybil Sanchez. And thank you for all that you do on a daily basis to support and motivate your students. I very much appreciate and enjoy supporting you and all of your language teacher colleagues as you bring effective, proficiency-focused strategies into your classroom. As a reminder, I provide on-site workshops, live virtual sessions, self-paced departmental PD, and my new Ready for Tomorrow Quick Win courses for individual teachers just like you. You can find all the links in the show notes or on my website, wlclassroom.com. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, wlclassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.